Sorry to interrupt this video for this awesome giveaway. All right, guys. So we're giving away some Vortex binos. You look like you could use some free binos. Do you like free binos? Do you like free hunting gear? Well, you're in the right place. We're gonna give away a lot of it. We're gonna start with a pair of Vortex binos. So in order to win these Vortex binos, it's not that hard, guys. All you gotta do is like this video, subscribe to the channel, and you can even comment below for extra entries. So we're gonna be giving away a pair of Vortex binos for now, but don't worry, if you don't win the Vortex binos, we're gonna keep giving stuff away. We're looking to ramp this channel up fast. So the faster we get more subscribers, the faster we start giving away stuff. Do you want a new bow? We're gonna be giving away a new bow. There's a whole list of things that we're gonna be giving away. This is just the first. So if you get entered now, you're gonna be entered for all future giveaways. So like I said, guys, we're gonna give away a pair of Vortex binos very soon. We only got a handful of subscribers to go until we get to our goal. When we get there, we're gonna announce it. We'll probably do another video announcing who the winner is and give away some free stuff. So if you guys want a pair of Vortex binos, maybe a bow in the future, or a lot of other cool gear, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're liking these videos and also comment for extra entries. So simple as that. If you like free stuff, do it. All right, guys, so you got a property. It's time to make some improvements. We're gonna say. There are definitely things that you guys can do to absolutely screw up your property. And we're gonna try and make sure that you don't do those today. Let's face the facts. There's a lot of videos out there. There's a lot of content out there telling you that this is the way you should do something. This is the way you need to do it every time. What you need to factor in, or that person maybe should factor in when telling you that, is that every property is different. If somebody recommends that you need to do something one way, it might not be the way that it needs to be done on your property. Why? Well, your properties are different. They might be lacking different features. Maybe that property has a ton of cover. Maybe your property doesn't have a ton of cover. Maybe they have great destination food sources. Maybe you don't. There's a lot of different variables. Maybe their access routes are different as far as predominant winds go, things like that. There's a million different things. So what you really need to do is research. See what's gonna work best for your property, not just listen to somebody. This is kind of like the whole hunting strategy thing. There's a lot of different ways to hunt whitetails, but the only way that you can figure out the best one for you is to try these different things out, or at least do enough research so that you know what's gonna work best for you, have the best educated guess. I guess we never really know for sure, but with the more research you do, we can figure those things out. So the first thing that I'm gonna go a little bit in depth on is we're gonna talk about food sources and how you can make a bad improvement or screw up the food source on your property. So you're gonna plant a food plot. Well, first and foremost, the first thing that you should ever do when it comes to creating a food plot is get a soil test done. What is a soil test? A soil test is a test that you can get at your local, your local co-op, or you can send them in online to a lot of places, and they will break down what your soil's lacking and how to fix it. If you follow this, guys, and you take the requirements or the things that you need in order to build your soil properly, given the food source that you're gonna plant, and Mother Nature cooperates, you're in the money. The first thing you can do is not take that soil test and kind of screw yourself over. But let's get into a little bit deeper into the food plot side of things. How can you screw up or make a bad improvement? You can plant the wrong food source. Don't get me wrong, there are planting a lot, or really any food source, is hopefully going to benefit you at some point in the season. But now we need to think a little bit deeper. At what point in the season is that food source going to benefit you? So let's say in your neck of the woods, for whatever the reason is, you don't get a lot of early season activity. Now we can try and plan an early season food source to try and bring those deer in. But if there's other pieces of the puzzle that are missing, that food source isn't going to take off like you'd like it to. And ultimately, you're not going to have as much luck as you'd like to. So what should you do in that scenario? You should probably try and bank on the time of the year in which you already get a lot of deer to frequent your property. If we can't manipulate habitat and the food source isn't going to change the movement completely and get those deer on your property early, we need to try and supplement the time in which you already have decent amount of luck or your best luck and try and make it better. We can't necessarily take a 0 out of 10 property and turn it into a 10 out of 10 overnight by planning one thing. So for those guys where this is the case, and you're not having a lot of luck, and maybe you occasionally get a buck on camera in late October, let's try and supplement that property so it's attractive during late October. Plant the right food source for the time in which you plan on hunting your property. If I had to state it any way, that'd be the way I'd like to state it. So let's say you're a big late season hunter. Maybe you should focus on having a lot of standing corn or standing beans. Maybe having some greens mixed in there, the radishes, the turnips, things like that. If you're an early season hunter, maybe you should be planting soybeans and banking on them before leaf drop, or not even leaf drop, but before those beans start to turn brown. If you do that, you're gonna have a palatable food source early in the season. So if you're the early season guy, you need to focus on early season food sources. If you're the middle season guy, you need to focus on maybe more your greens, your radishes, your turnips, your clovers, things like that. If you're the late season guy, I'd like to focus more on grains, especially if I have enough area to actually plant those and be able to keep them long enough into the season. Maybe you gotta fence them, maybe you gotta do different things to keep the deer off of them. But if you got enough ground, plant those grains for the late season. The second thing, or second improvement that I guess some people just overlook or don't pay attention to on a yearly basis is, you go into your stand and you go to this hot spot, but you're not paying attention on how you get there. Access is key, guys. So when you're thinking about these improvements that you're making and working on access routes, maybe steering or creating barriers to ultimately get you to a stand location more securely, think about things like predominant winds. Think about the southwest wind. Think about a northwest wind. Those are the winds that we're seeing as whitetail hunters, and when we're seeing those winds, you need to put everything in, all the puzzle pieces together, and make sure that your access route that maybe you're creating. I've seen guys literally take a backhoe and dig a ditch all the way to a tree stand. But if that, it might be the easiest way to get from point A to point B, but it might not be the right way. So if you're going in to make an improvement on the property and changing up access routes, doing things like that, trying to steer or maybe not barricade, but like try and hide yourself, planting screening in the wrong places, make sure that you're doing it so that it makes sense. All right, deer are coming from this way, from this bedding area, they're coming to this food source on this wind. When the thermals are doing this, this is where the access needs to be. Think deeper into those improvements before you make them, because once you go in there and you do something drastic like of taking a backhoe in there and creating these ditches, these things cannot be undone. Now those two things, they're on the moderate level when it comes to screwing up your property. There's a lot of other things I can think about that maybe aren't improvements that could screw up your property. But this last one takes the cake. A lot of times when I am contacted by possible clients, they show me their maps and I say, okay, this is good. And they tell me a little bit more about the property, and they said, yeah, well, I just logged it last year. They just did some sort of timber stand improvement. Yeah, I've done a bunch of hinge cutting because I saw it on this video and I was told it was a great idea. Come on in and let's try and fix this problem. Before trying to have somebody come in and fix the problem, make sure that you made the right solution in the first place, because ultimately that's what you did, is you created a problem. So what I'm getting at is cutting timber. You only get one shot at this, guys. Make sure you're doing it the right way in the right areas so that it's huntable. Okay, there are a lot of different methods that you could use. Bringing in a logger. Let's talk about logging for a second. You need to talk to your logger when you bring a logger in. You need to make sure that your goals are on point with his goals. That logger's not necessarily a deer hunter. He's not building a property for deer hunting. He's coming in there, he's looking at whatever trees he finds valuable and whatever locations he wants, and he's taking them out. That might not benefit. It might create better habitat, but it might not make a more usable property if it's right next to your access point and you gotta walk past the bedding area to even get to your tree stand. So think about that. Another timber stand improvement, the hinge cutting method. Man, I've made some videos about hinge cutting, guys, and I know I get some people pretty heated about them, talking about those timber stand improvement methods. And there is a time and a place for hinge cutting. I don't love using it strictly because a lot of times when you make that hinge cut, if you don't make it at the right level, that tree decides to sucker up and sprout. And a lot of times those sprouts end up way above the deer's head, not making them browsable for the deer, ultimately creating a new canopy within a couple of years. The reason you cut the tree in the first place, to get rid of the canopy, create side cover, or create more browse at the deer's level. So hinge cutting might be the wrong improvement for your property. When do I like using hinge cutting? I'm not opposed to steering deer with hinge cutting. And on properties where maybe logging isn't an option and it's your last resort, maybe that's the best thing you can do. And it still might not make your property a 10 out of 10, but if it makes it a 6 or 7 out of 10 when it was a 4, maybe that's the scenario in which you might use hinge cutting. The other timber stand improvement method that I've seen used or sometimes like to use on specific properties in specific scenarios. I know a lot of people get heated about, well, you're leaving trees as widow makers and this and that, and there's a whole different conversation we can get into for a different day as to why and when you should use it. And I guess that conversation should be right now. The hack and squirt method should be used for the most part on moderate to small sized trees, something you can easily go in there with a hatchet, spray herbicide into the tree, apply it, kill the tree. Now, I'm not saying to consistently go in there and use this method with a chainsaw on large trees, because you will create widow makers and things like that. But even to that argument, ultimately you're doing this to create bedding areas, or maybe it's create the food source, whatever it is. If you're creating the food source, obviously you want it logged and stumps removed, but if you're doing this method to ultimately create bedding area, you're doing it in an area in which you're not going to be going in anyway. So if it's a safety thing that you're thinking about having the trees that might eventually dry out and fall, I get it, I understand it, but you're not going to be going in those areas. And the chances of deer being in those areas, if you're worried about the deer, as that tree falls, slim to none. But I get it. I mean, there's always a safety hazard with anything. And even going back to the hinge cutting there, hinge cutting, guys, there's a danger if you don't have a lot of experience with a chainsaw. You never know how that tree's going to react, if it's going to jump off the hinge or hit you, anything like that. But at the end of the day, these are all timber stand improvements. And if you don't pick the right one or get it done in the right spot, or strategically plan what timber stand improvement needs to be done when and where and all these things, and you just go in there and you start hacking away, guys, you can't undo it. You can't. I've gone to a lot of properties where they've hired people or watched videos and they said, you know, hinge cut all this. Guys, I can't unhinge that tree. You can't unhinge that tree. They get the property clear cut. And, you know, is it a lost cause? Is the property completely screwed and you can never, you know, work with it again if you get it clear cut? No, but make sure you're doing it strategically. Timber doesn't grow back in a year. You get one shot at it before you either have to completely change your plan, redesign your property, or get it right the first time. And now, don't get me wrong, there's some of you out there that are looking at this video and you're thinking about bringing on a habitat management guy, or you're thinking about making changes to your property and you just got it logged and you didn't think about predominant winds, you didn't think about placing things strategically. It can be worked on, it can be improved upon, and if that's your goal, those are still possible, but maybe not. Your property can't be a 10 out of 10, not now at least, not until the timber regrows in certain areas, things like that. So the biggest improvement that I see guys screwing up on is the timber stand improvement side of things. Like I said, guys, you only get one shot at it a lot of times, so make sure you're doing it the right way, in the right areas the first time, because at the end of the day, it could really screw up an entire property, devalue the property, and make the property maybe harder for you to sell to somebody who's looking to buy it for hunting purposes, or things like that. So at the end of the day, these are some of the improvements, quote unquote improvements, that you really need to be careful with. And don't get me wrong, guys, there's a lot more improvements we could go over, but those ones are the deal breakers for me as a habitat management specialist, and they should be for you as a property owner. So keep those in mind, guys. If you guys are liking these videos, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. We're coming out with videos a couple times a week, trying to get as much content out there about whitetails as we possibly can for all you property owners and deer hunters out there. So if you like what you're seeing, like and subscribe.